If you've watched some of the different analysis videos I've done on the channel covering the various characters of the Sonic franchise, you've probably noticed somewhat of a pattern in how they tend to go. Usually beginning with the relentless praise and gushing about how perfect a character was, before the inevitable nerd raging and contemplation of one's existence over how depressingly awful they've become. It's a scarily consistent trend and goes a long way towards showing just how poorly utilized the entire supporting cast of Sonic is right now. But, and I'm glad to be able to tell you all with confidence, this video will not conform to that cycle of euphoria and depression, as this time we'll be covering Sonic Adventure's E102 Gamma. See, Gamma's story is truly special and unique in the Sonic universe because it's actually an entirely definitive and self-contained character journey, one that begins and ends in a single game. Gamma never gets to see anything after his debut title, which means that unlike the rest of the supporting cast, Gamma never had the chance to be watered down, repurposed, or flanderized, giving us a deep and emotional story, played out by perhaps the least emotional character in the game. A character that got to play out its arc in a clean and well-paced story, that was never cheapened or undone in a future game. That's a pretty rare and amazing thing to be able to say about a Sonic character. So, to better complement the whole change of pace for this analysis, and to help me better deep dive this surprisingly dark story, I've decided to bring in some outside help.
Sup, Mark? Glad to be here to talk about my second favorite robot from this beautiful mess of a series. The story for Sonic Adventure, Battle, and Heroes all paint a pretty grim tale of how Eggman treats his creations. He may be a kooky villain in a lot of interpretations of the series, but I think Mr. Tinker said it best in the IDW comics. What kind of a monster would program you with emotions and then prey upon them?
And this is actually a rather important point. The sheer horror of Gamma's story are just as much a window into Eggman's character as they are Gamma's. And when you look past the god-tier stash and many eccentricities, there really are very few antagonists as truly evil as Dr. Robotnik. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to hit that bell icon to be notified when new videos go live. But for now, let's get started, shall we? Back when I first heard we were actually going to get to play as one of Eggman's robots in Sonic Adventure, I was hyped. Similar to the absolute honor it was to play as Eggman himself in Sonic Adventure 2, I was 100% on board for getting to experience a Sonic story from what I knew at that point as a badnik's point of view. You know, badnik. 'Cause I'm old. Growing up with movies like Short Circuit, where awesome robots gained sentience and went on cool adventures, turning on their morally questionable masters and choosing their own path, yeah, everything about this strange-looking E102 Gamma was right up my street. While Gamma's design doesn't resemble an animal like most of Eggman's previous creations, who would often take the form of creatures native to their environment to increase their effectiveness, it does, however, heavily resemble the Egg Robo from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, a seemingly very conscious design choice when you look at some of Gamma's concept art. Eggman was, after all, getting increasingly vain, making his creations look more and more like himself as time went on, and Gamma's design really does better conform to Eggman's new 3D shape, compared to the rounder Eggman and Egg Robo of the classic era. E102 Gamma wouldn't be the first example of Eggman's robots turning good in the Sonic universe. In the extended media, we'd already had the likes of Uncle Chuck and Shorefuse the Cyberneck, but this would be the first time that the game series would attempt this story. I said in my Shadow video that there definitely were dark themes in Sonic games before Sonic Adventure 2, and really, whether or not you've ever chosen to read into this character and story as much as I have, Gamma has probably one of the darkest narratives in the entire series. One I never really seen coming back in the day. One that plays off the stuff we all know and take for granted about the series, but in showing exactly how that chili dog gets made, really makes clear how horrific a character like Eggman is, and the cruelty he is capable of.
As for Gamma's backstory, now, when dealing with this bot, there's a handful of continuities you could look at. There's the Archie comics, Sonic X, or the video games. We'll be focusing primarily on the games because that's where we get the most cogent story, I think. The Archie comics involved Gamma uploading his free will and spirit into Omega after all, and, well, things are a bit less convoluted in the games. So, Eggman designs a new series of robots in Sonic Adventure, and like many of Eggman's other creations, this series of robots was given a semblance of free will and even personalities. Unlike the overly ambitious Metal Sonic, who would eventually usurp Eggman in Sonic Heroes, Gamma's exit from employ under Eggman was done more so out of developing the emotion of compassion.
Gamma is born straight into an existence of unquestioning servitude, glancing briefly at others destined for the same fate, before setting eyes on his creator for the very first time. But unlike the vast majority of newborns of most species that come into the world, Gamma isn't met by the kind and welcoming face of someone who will take care of them and prepare them for the world. Gamma is just a machine, and Eggman treats him exactly like one treats a machine. His first command that Gamma attempted to defeat E101 Beta, his predecessor, a superior model with 2 gun arms who Eggman fully expects to destroy Gamma. The purpose of the E-series of robots is to serve as crew on the Egg Carrier, and as Eggman's elite guard, and he thinks nothing of pitting these machines against each other to ensure only the best get a spot. Success entitles you to remain on the Egg Carrier. Failure sees you exiled. A pretty unforgiving world to be born into just 5 minutes ago, even if you are only a machine. But straight away we can see something isn't right with the E-series. When Gamma unexpectedly comes out on top against Beta, Beta actually exhibits traits of jealousy towards Gamma, childishly blocking him from Eggman's view as he beeps and chirps furiously in protest at being sent away. Beta seems to crave Eggman's approval, even displaying hostility on an emotional level towards Gamma for causing him to look bad in front of their master. These are not robotic or machine-like traits, and whether Eggman doesn't notice this, or he simply doesn't care, the warning signs for this model were pretty evident early on. Even though Beta lost, Eggman grants him special permission to join him on the Egg Carrier, which might have seemed like mercy or sympathy were it not for his next comment.
So you want to come along with us, eh? Okay. We could always use a spare set of parts, I guess. You have special permission.
Eggman then tasks his 4 new E-Series robots with capturing a seemingly inconspicuous frog, who we learn had swallowed a Chaos Emerald and absorbed the tail of Chaos Zero. This tail was one of the many pieces Eggman needed to combine together to create Perfect Chaos. Perfect Chaos was his first experiment with controlling an eldritch abomination, horror, or god. You see, in a lot of his previous attempts at taking over the world, he constructed his own giant doomsday robot or machine, or when he made the Death Egg. None of those plans had worked, so let's go ahead and go for something a little more deified. Now, these doomsday machines and eldritch abominations are all used for the purpose of either controlling the world or building Eggman Land, or both. It's honestly really inconsistent which one he cares more about. Anyways, upon obtaining the Frog and Emerald Coast, and also beating his more advanced robotic cousin E101 Beta aboard the Hot Shelter, E102 had proven himself to be the ultimate of the original E-Series to Eggman. This leads Eggman to whisk each of the E-Series away, some to be scrap metal roaming the countryside, and some to be experimented on in an effort to make a more powerful, upgraded war machine. Now, this event plants the seeds for Gamma that, should he fail Eggman, he would end up as scrap metal, discarded and used for parts or otherwise abused. The idea that his master doesn't have his best interest at heart is introduced to him fully. The power imbalance and toxic dynamic of master and slave starts the domino effect that is Gamma's tragic story. Because after all, at this point there's only 2 paths available to him. Perfectly serve Eggman and never fail, a logical impossibility, or, a much more likely route for survival, try to find a way to escape. After this quick calculation, Gamma is then introduced, as every other character in Sonic Adventure is, to the Echidna tribe's troubled past. As with everyone else, this is done through communicating with the spirit of Tikal. While in the past, Gamma discovers Chow, defenseless beings, but pretty much useless. Beings in need of someone to protect them. Through discovering Tikal and learning about Chaos, the guardian of the Chow, more seeds of dissent start to worm their way into his programming. After all, Eggman was more powerful than him. Shouldn't he be protecting him? But no, in his case, it was very much the other way around. He was a servant, a slave. Again, this isn't enough to shake his primary objective of serving Eggman, but it is enough to plant the idea that sometimes those under you are worth protecting, and not the other way around. And not just because they're useful, but because it's just the right thing to do. This is, of course, in staunch contrast to Eggman's utilitarian philosophy of scrapping any sentient life he happened to forge by his own hands merely due to a couple of failures so that he can repurpose the parts.
Seriously, Eggman is totally ruthless when it comes to how he treats his creations. Here they are, bickering over which one of them brought the right frog and has pleased him most. Gamma actually looking really pleased with himself, having done a good job, only for that one moment to be quickly snuffed out, as Eggman warps the others away for their failures. This seems to have a big impact on Gamma, locking eyes with Delta before it's ejected from the ship. Even without any expressions on their faces, you can see the implied resentment in Delta's stare, as well as the mixture of sadness and confusion in Gamma. His siblings all tried their best, yet were still discarded or repurposed after a single failure. It's a brutal and unforgiving existence, and Gamma doesn't seem all too sure how to feel about it. This internal struggle is exacerbated further when Gamma stumbles into the wrong room after getting spun by the random playground floor wheel in the floor. Seriously, who puts that there? Gamma ends up in a room where Beta is being stripped for parts and repurposed, and this sight unquestionably has a deep emotional impact on him. First, he sees the discarded pieces on the floor, before staring for a while at the horrific process, only able to utter a single word.
Beta?
After leaving the room and composing himself, Gamma opts for probably the most human coping mechanism for dealing with trauma: suppression.
This is the wrong room.
The huge impact of this scene is delivered entirely by context, as we never really get any facial or vocal indications of what exactly Gamma is feeling, and I think this helps add a lot more emotional weight to the situation. It's pretty uncomfortable to watch, and really builds Eggman as the true horror of this world. This isn't some cute slapstick relationship like with Orbot and Cubot. Failure isn't tolerated, and Eggman doesn't spare a single thought for the beings he creates, or the emotions he allows them to feel. Their suffering means less than nothing to him.
The next domino falls because, of course, one of the elements needed to complete Eggman's plans of creating perfect chaos is all 7 Chaos Emeralds. Like almost every other one of his plans, they all seem to hinge on this one thing. There is, however, a thorn in Eggman's side. The fact that one of those Chaos Emeralds is hidden inside a pendant worn by a Flicky that is currently under the protection of one Amy Rose. Amy presents a complicated problem for Gamma. You see, when Gamma goes to retrieve the bird from Amy, she presents him with one of the most pressing questions of self-reflection that really anyone can grapple with. Why do you do what you do? Why do you believe what you believe? No, seriously, try that with literally any belief you have. You'll find that sometimes you come up short. You sometimes don't actually even know why you believe certain things that you believe. It's an astoundingly simple but really terrifying thought experiment. She then presses further, asking Gamma why he wants the bird specifically, and Gamma can only respond that data on that is unavailable. She then presses, why not help us out instead? Don't you know how bad I feel? Gamma pauses, backing up, his programming trying to wrap itself around this. Eggman never planned for this kind of contingency, and by giving a robot like Gamma sentience, he's actually given him the ability to reason his way through this. Eggman, in his hubris, believes that Gamma will always make the decision to serve. Gamma finally responds, does not compute. Why try to save that, which is useless to you? But remember, he's already been confronted with the Chow and Tikal. He already knows the reason. Amy, feeling sorry for him, comments that Eggman failed to give him feelings, which we learn later on isn't exactly true. But it's enough to make Gamma question things even further. This combination of Amy's gentle influence and logic and communication between the bird she was protecting and the animal that was powering Gamma start to germinate those seeds of doubt towards his master that were planted just a few moments ago. Gamma's mind is almost made up. He helps Amy Rose escape, lacking any prime directive not to. This combination of her logic and the influence of Tikal's introduction of innocent beings needing protection likely leads him to decide that he should go against his programming. The primary programming of serving Eggman, in any case. For everything else, it seems that Eggman didn't really do a good job of filling in those blanks. In his arrogance, he forgot to program failsafes in case of rebellion. I mean, who would dare rebel against him, after all? And, he'd have similar problems with other creations down the road.
That mixture of Amy tapping into Gamma's emotions and the visual stimulus of seeing the flicky, an important connection that is explained later in the story, creates the perfect storm in the digital mind of this tortured soul, forcing him to reflect inward on his whole existence and how he wants to relate to the world. And something about seeing Amy helping others and Tikal's message of the strong protecting the vulnerable sees kindness start to feel far more like the right thing to Gamma, producing a range of emotionally charged beeps before releasing them from their cell. The same noises Beta made when pleading with Eggman to let him on the egg carrier after losing to Gamma. These machines are clearly predisposed to emotions like sadness, jealousy, and even caring. We all know animals have been used to power Robotnik's robots since, well, the beginning. And for a long time, this went off without a hitch for him. Unquestioning slaves to patrol the planet and take out his enemies. But something about the E-series changed all that. Advancing his designs over time, Eggman would eventually make his creation's AI so advanced that they had the ability to think for themselves, far beyond the scope of what they were created to do. But it's scary to think that some form of consciousness exists within these robots. And whether you think this consciousness is the imprisoned animal itself, an entirely new one belonging to the machine, or a mixture of both, the fact that a form of life exists within these metal shells, and Robotnik just uses and abuses them the way he does, really shows how evil he is, thinking nothing of making Gamma watch as his siblings are discarded. This is some really horrific stuff when you actually stop to think about it. Yet, it's things about the series we've all known for a long time. But Amy asserts that she sees true good in Gamma, and that the next time they meet, it will be as friends.
Capturing Amy for the sake of the Chaos Emerald turned out to be the next step in undoing Eggman's hold over Gamma in more ways than one, however, as capturing her always leads to a prompt rescue attempt from Sonic the Hedgehog. A battle between Sonic and Gamma takes place, and Eggman orders Gamma to stall for time as he makes his way to the helm of the egg carrier to continue to upgrade Chaos into Chaos 6. Depending on the story you play, Gamma either wins or Sonic wins, but we'll go ahead and say Sonic winning is more likely to be canon. In this version of events, of course Gamma can't beat Sonic, as even robots equipped specifically to deal with him don't really fare much better. And right before Sonic attempts to destroy Gamma for good, releasing the trapped animal inside him as he does with all of Eggman's robots, Amy Rose intervenes, saving Gamma's life, cementing finally that he really is on the wrong side. She convinces him that he's not actually evil, and doesn't truly want to hurt others. He's only being ordered to. And as she'd already made him come to terms with, he doesn't even know why he follows those orders. He doesn't owe Eggman anything. Gamma then escapes the crashing egg carrier after asking Amy, "Why do you help me?" receiving only a simple, "We're friends and you should ditch Eggman" in reply. This is enough in Gamma's mind to change his prime directive. Instead of serving Eggman without question, he will instead liberate the trapped animal cores in each of the E-Series robots. And eventually, this will include himself. He deletes his master registration, categorizing the E-Series as friends, and begins his mission to save each and every one through eliminating them. After going back to the egg carrier where his rebellion began, he concludes by saving the last of the E-Series, himself. And Gamma's story, tragically, ends in suicide. Eggman doesn't realize the E-Series can rebel like this, however. As far as he's concerned, Gamma died stalling for time on the egg carrier. Even in the IDW comics, we can see that Eggman abandons base after base, machine after machine, calling them old relics and junk, while people like Starline note that this is his legacy. These things are important. This won't be the last time an abandoned machine in the middle of an abandoned Eggman base will find a way to haunt him. But, not knowing this information, all he knows is that Gamma was a valiant warrior who never really failed him, not even once. This leads him to create more E-Series robots in his employ. This includes a fully customized model that fights for him in Sonic Battle, and an entire line of guard robots called the E1,000 series in Sonic Adventure 2. Finally, this concludes with his penultimate model and final variant of the E-Series, aptly named Omega, who, once again, rebels against Eggman due to his constant abuses.
Eggman's utter disregard for the beings he creates will time and time again prove his undoing, leaving more creations than he'd like to wonder just why it is they put up with his shit. Gamma's self-appointed mission to quote-unquote save the E-Series was born out of his discovery of emotions and learning the difference between what is morally right and wrong. And by including himself among those who need saving, he set out to right all the wrongs he could, even his own existence, snuffing out the fledgling lives of these artificial beings in order to free the original life that was stolen to create them. Remembering the horrific mistreatment of his siblings and the sight of Beta being mindlessly torn apart, Gamma couldn't bear the idea of working for Eggman anymore. His interactions with Amy and experience with Tikal instead sending him on his own path, a path of self-discovery and emotional growth. Gamma purged all records of Eggman as his master from his programming, and assigned himself a new mission to save his siblings. Save them from an existence of misery and suffering, and save the innocent creatures trapped at their cores. His unwavering robot logic determining that he too must be saved. Everything about how this scene is arranged is just amazing. The pure silence apart from the ocean waves lapping against the sides of the egg carrier as Gamma contemplates what must be done, and the version of his theme that plays as he sacrifices himself, that amazing mix of sorrow and joyful triumph. Sorrow for the death of Gamma, but also joy for a family reunited. For me, Gamma's story will always be hugely special in the Sonic series because it's been allowed to exist entirely as its own thing, never tainted or undone by a future retcon or sullying of his character. Even within its own game, it was pretty much a story unto itself. Were it not for that pink flicky turning up at the end, you nearly wouldn't have known Gamma even existed. Yet, he paved the way for awesome characters like Omega and helped pioneer the idea that darker, more serious narratives could work in a Sonic game. Robot sentience, emotional discovery, internal reflection, abuse, sacrifice, none of these are topics anyone would expect to find in what is essentially a kid's game. Yet Gamma helped normalize these more mature themes and made it possible going forward for characters like Shadow to have the backstory he did. For such a fleeting existence, Gamma will always be immensely important to the Sonic series. He helped pave the way for most of what I truly love about it, and I'll always enjoy returning to his story whenever I can. I'd like to thank Cirrus for all his help with this video. His section on Gamma and Omega in my big collab on Sonic's Friends made him my undisputed #1 pick for this analysis, and I'm really glad our schedules lined up for this. It's truly been a pleasure having you on again, my friend.
Anytime, Mark. Glad to have been able to help out with this one. If any of your audience want to find me, I'm doing an issue-by-issue breakdown of the entire Archie comic series over on my channel, Necosirus. I've also got some non-Sonic related content there, but I mean, come on, you know why you're clicking the subscribe button. We both know. And when I get to the point where the Gamma and Omega arcs happen in Archie, you can bet I'll have a lot to say. You can either check the pinned comment or the description, wherever Mark decides to throw that link. I'll have a Twitch as well, where I talk about some darker stuff. Honestly, it's probably best not to go there. I do, however, announce when I'm going to go over Archie stuff over on Twitter, so there's that.
As for me, I'm eager to hear what you guys think about Gamma. Do you appreciate his story and everything it's meant for the series? Or maybe you think his influence is overblown and his story pretentious? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. If you could make sure to throw a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, I would be very grateful. You can also join the Ace Card Gaming Discord, follow me on Twitter, and support the channel on Patreon if that's possible for you. All the relevant links can be found in the description, including a link to Cirrus' channel. Any and all support from you guys is very much appreciated. The channel certainly didn't get where it is without all of you awesome people. A big thank you for watching, and as always guys, take care.